Hey, man, so good to have Brian and Nathan here for our very first podcast. I don't even think we came up with a name yet, but we'll call it Northview Podcast right now. You know, real creative right there. But we're just looking forward to
the Corona cast.
Yeah, all right, I like that.
Episode one.
Episode one, and maybe the only episode. We'll see.
Yeah.
Just wanted to talk to Nathan, and Brian and I just had some questions that we wanted to ask just about his sermon this past week and last week, and just give him a chance to kind of take us deeper than what he would normally do on a typical Sunday morning. So Nathan, that sound cool?
Yeah, that sounds great, guys. This is fun. It's different doing it this way, but it's actually I'm not wore out from it yet. I think I'm going to get there, but right now it's still just enough different that it's still fun. I don't know. You guys feeling the same way?
Yeah, it's exciting in a weird way, like just doing different things and, pushing into this platform that we've not done yet. And it's cool that we're all in 3 different rooms and able to talk together.
Yeah. It's interesting that we get a chance to try things, and we're just trying them, and we're out there, So yeah, here we are doing another thing.
Yeah, we've been talking about doing a podcast for months, and to think that this is what was required to push us over into actually making it happen. I feel like it's a little bit of an indictment on us, but we'll take it and we'll just roll with it. So.
Yeah. So this is fun. So if you're watching with us,
it's good to do this. It's good to do this.
Yeah, no, I agree. So if you're watching this podcast with us, you're going to see our eyes going back and forth, and it's just because we're paying attention to the speaker. So don't think that there's something really exciting going on in my office right now. Hey, Nathan, we were in the middle of a sermon series through the book of Ephesians, and we really just hit a hard pause on that and are going in a different direction. What led you to make that decision?
On the 15th of March, the conversation, the Sunday or March 15th, we decided to stay in Ephesians, and partly because we had like a day. There was just no time hardly to prepare for it. And I felt that sermon, that while the content in the book of Ephesians is wonderful, and there's certainly ways that we could make connections to what we're experiencing and what we're going through right now, I really just felt like it was square peg round hole for what was going on and what we needed to be talking about. I feel like this is such an unprecedented time for us that if I could have had even one more day, we might have done it on March 15th. But as soon as that one hit, and when I watched it back on that Sunday, I knew we probably needed to go in a direction that was different for a little bit, just to try to take a look at the scriptures that are going to speak more directly into this. We'll come back and get Ephesians, and we'll finish our walk through it. And I think there are some things in Ephesians that are going to be really, really practical. The back end of the book of Ephesians has a lot about daily living and how to do this, how to live this out at home. And, trust me, the longer we stay in our homes together, the more we need to hear messages about husbands and wives and what to do with your children and, those kind of things. But it just didn't feel like the right time to have that message. And so I just kind of spent a little bit of time in prayer and some thought, and there was specifically some scriptures in the book of 2 Corinthians. And then as I got working out a little bit more from 2 Corinthians 4 and 5, Philippians came to mind, 1 Corinthians 15 came to mind. And I started to kind of just visualize a 4-part series, I guess, that you could say we're going through right now. We use the title, Don't Lose Heart. That title came right out of 2 Corinthians 4, which we read this week. But the 4 prongs of this are basically the power that's available to us through, number 1, prayer. That was first week of the series. This past week was perspective, as we get into this week, we're going to talk about purpose. This Sunday, we're going to talk about purpose and the power when you're in crisis to find, instead of just worrying about everything, is like, how can God use me in this time? What does God want to do to help me love somebody or serve somebody in this time? And then Easter Sunday, I mean, this is going to be an unprecedented Easter Sunday, in that we can't gather the way that we normally do. I actually heard a newscast yesterday as they were talking about President Trump extending these guidelines through the month of April. And they said, we're talking about Easter. And they were saying that Easter is going to be far more muted, and the celebration of Easter is going to be far more muted. And I remember hearing that yesterday and just going, man, I hope not. I hope, even though if muted means we're not gathering as much physically, okay, I get that. But man, I hope, and that's what that Easter Sunday sermon is going to be about, that the power that's available through the resurrection to us in all circumstances, especially after this life. I mean, it's a message that needs to be heard. And I hope that it's anything but muted. Even though our church is scattered, I hope it's anything but muted on Easter Sunday.
You know, as you know, like we sometimes take a long time to come up with sermon series, and it you know, kind of has to marinate in us for a long time. You had to turn the corner real quick and come up with a series. What was that? I mean, did that come fairly quickly for you, or was it pretty strenuous?
So 2 Corinthians 4 and 5 for me are what I would call North Star passages in Scripture. I've got a handful of them. I've got a handful of places that I go, and when my rhythms are off, or when my emotions are fried, or when I'm weary or struggling or whatever, I've just got a handful of places that I just call them North Star passages. And so 2 Corinthians 4 and 5 are North Star for me, are North Star passages. And that was the first place I went. And I started to try to build an entire series just out of there. But it didn't quite, I was forcing it a little bit. The more I was, and you guys know this, as you kind of have an idea when you run with it, and you're asking God to kind of speak, and it just seemed like it fleshed out a little bit more. And then I thought, there's no need to tie strictly just to these passages. Let's get a little broader, because that Philippians 4 passage that we talked about in week 1 about prayer and don't be anxious about anything, but pray about everything, it just seemed like that needed to be the opener. And, again, once I started to see a little bit of a shape of like, let's go to prayer first. Let's get our heads on right, and let's get the perspective right. And then let's be mobilized for action. Let's not run from this. We're not people that run from crisis. We mount up and we gear up and we charge forward in moments like this. That's what the church is called to be. And then Easter then becomes just this overwhelming celebration that even in the face of death, God he still reigns, and he's able to do more than we could ever have asked for or even imagine. So even in pain, there becomes this great triumph, for Easter. Now, if you ask me what we're doing after that, I think that is still
up in the air.
That's where I'm praying. Like the rest of it hasn't come together as quickly. But I do think that those 4 weeks, they did end up, just sketching out pretty quickly.
So those sermons from Ephesians are the ones that we didn't get to, or are they just it goes in the vault and we never get to hear them?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. We might have to podcast those if we can't fit them into the schedule.
There you go.
Maybe those are. I don't know. We got to figure that out.
It's pretty fluid.
As you guys know, we plan these sermon series a year and a half at a time. And so if you start moving too much around, all the other pieces that you have prepared,
all the dominoes,
like a big Jenga board.
It totally
just falls apart.
I just imagine train cars and they just all start colliding with each other.
Yeah. Well, you were talking about you were talking about that first week being about prayer, and in that sermon you were talking about the what do you call it, an acronym, calm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I remember you saying that you actually got that from somewhere else. What was that?
Yeah. So that was stolen from Lucado. Max Lucado has always had a just almost like a poetic way of writing and talking and communicating.
Yeah, I agree.
Great truths of the Bible. Like he just like, I'll be honest, for many years of my life, early on in my kind of, I would say, spiritual awakening, I loved and read everything of his I could get my hands on. It just really connected with me. And then for a season of time, it just felt like, I don't know, maybe I could move on. I don't mean to be rude or mean, but like it was just a little more simplistic. But I have found that certain seasons, like nobody writes Christmas stuff like Max. Like Max does incredible stuff with Christmas. He's just always got great metaphors and great content and great one-liners. Just great way to rephrase. He tells stories well. And he did a project with Randy Frazee a couple of years ago called The Story that I have the utmost respect for.
Yeah.
I went into it as a church leader a little bit, not reluctant, but just not sure what the hype was all about. And it turned out to be remarkable. And Max had a big hand in that. And he wrote a book a couple of years ago called I believe it's called Anxious for Nothing. And that's where this came from. And I remember when the book came out, it's one of those, you buy books. I do this a lot. I buy books, I read a little bit, and then I move on. And then I buy another book and I read a little bit, and I never get through it.
I can't do that. I got to finish it. OCD.
I'm a better starter. I'm a better starter than a finisher. And so yeah, that's my wife about home projects, right?
No.
Now you're stepping on some toes.
Yeah. I get about 8. I get partway through a job and I'm like, I don't want to finish this. Let's start another one. And yeah, so I don't want to finish this sermon series. Let's start another one.
Right.
But I'd come across it there, and as I was reading, actually, I was reminded of it while I was reading Philippians 4 again, just in some of my study, and I just remembered I read a book that somebody wrote something about this, and I had to do a little mental vault searching, and then I remembered, that was Lucado's book. Let me go, and I pulled it out, and I'm telling you what, and if you read that first chapter, it is incredible for today's moment. It is an incredible read. He wrote it a couple years ago without knowing this was going to happen.
So it was called Anxious for Nothing by Max Lucado. Yeah. Okay.
So the C, I'll just refresh people's memory. The C was celebrate God's sovereignty. The A was ask for help. The L was leave your concerns with him. And the M was meditate on good things. Nathan, do you feel like you're really good at one of those and one of those areas you struggle with, or how would you kind of rate yourself on that?
Yeah. I would say the middle of it is where I struggle the most. I think asking for help and leaving it in God's hands are where I sometimes struggle the most. I tend to energized in Christ. Let's go. Here's what we need to do. Let's push. Let's plow. Let's roll with this. And some of this stuff is just beyond my pay grade, and I can't figure it out, and I don't know, and we don't have the capacity as an eldership or as a staff to know what to do. The rules were changing so rapidly. Now we're starting to settle into a little bit of a normal, and the normal is just that everybody's disconnected. Right. But that walk, from the beginning of March to the middle of March, the rules were changing by the day.
Yeah, they were.
And, we were coming up with strategies, and we'd walk out of a meeting and the next news bullet would hit, and our whole plan was out the window. So,
yep.
Probably the middle part is where I struggle the most. I think I really have a pretty good appreciation for the most part, of the fact that God's in control and he's gonna do something, in this. I can I feel like the good things, I in general am a glass half full kind of guy,
Yeah.
but that middle stuff about asking for help and really leaving my anxieties at the foot of the cross, leaving them with Jesus, that passage that we referenced, 2 Peter 5:7, cast all your anxiety upon him for he cares for you. I feel like that is that was my grandma's favorite verse, and she was a worrier. And so there's some genetic stuff going on there. It's my mom, it's me. But I've always loved the visual of that verse of just throwing it down. That word cast means to throw it down. And like to throw it down violently, not even to set it down, but like throw it. And I just I have a visual a lot of times that I do in my head when I'm praying prayers of anxiety, and I'm just taking off what I'm wearing, the weight that I'm wearing, and I'm like a coat, just throwing it down.
Yeah. It was a great sermon to start off the series, because a lot of people were, I remember hearing from people saying that they were kind of getting overcome with anxiety because, you're not, the news is full right now. And especially in those early days of dire warnings and pretty scary stuff. And people were getting pretty full of anxiety and so to preach that message, and even that acrostic that you brought in, that it's calm, right? Like, and then trusting Jesus. But, when it comes right down to it, how can we, if somebody is asking you, how can we trust Jesus to bring us peace during these chaotic days? I mean, they seem to, you can have these moments of, checking yourself and whatever, but then you watch the news again and you get amped up again.
Right.
Yeah. It's a challenge. And I think what people are learning is that, like so much of our journey with Christ, it's always in progress. It's never complete. And he's always doing work, in us. I think you got to give yourself a lot of grace. You got to give the people around you a lot of grace. Everybody is fired up, right now. My kids don't have a whole lot of grasp on coronavirus. To be honest, they're not real worried about it because I don't think they have the ability to worry too much about it. But I'm telling you, our household at times during this thing, it's been fired up around here. People are getting a little charged, it's like they're tired of being in the house and they're tired of, so if it's not one anxiety, like it's just the dynamic that this interruption has created. It makes it, it makes it to where, even yesterday, it's just like the prospect of gathering our family up to do church together. You might have to, just getting in that routine and getting that motion is not easy. Some of you guys with kids are wrangling your kids to get around the couch to take church in. And it's not the beautiful, awesome, Instagram worthy moment that you see other people have. And you're going like, oh man, what do I need to do to get there? And so, the financial conversations and the stimulus bill and what it means and what it doesn't mean. I mean, it's just, it's a day by day, sometimes hour by hour experience. I feel like just trying to settle myself down.
Well, we know that like
those around me.
chaos will always be here, right? Like this is full blown in front of everybody. One of the things that I kept saying is, you just don't have a box to put this experience in. Because nobody's gone through this, but chaos has always been around. So I think your message of peace, Jesus brings peace in chaos, is something that we're all getting a dose of right now. But later on, it's one of these things that we're going to be able to kind of grab and have that mental image of throwing a coat down. I love that. I think that's something tangible that we can grab a hold of right now. Maybe you're listening and you just feel like, oh, I am feeling anxious. And what is it that I need to throw down?
Yeah, I think the coat was probably the second most memorable metaphor of that first sermon. I'm pretty sure the seesaw was the most memorable.
Now we got to talk about that. In the sermon, you said that somebody got off when they were on the bottom, and it launched you up into the sky.
Yeah.
So in Iowa, where you grew up, seesaws work different.
Gravity's a little different in Iowa.
Seesaws in Iowa are unlike anything you've ever seen, man.
I guess so.
When they go down, you go flying up into the sky. No, I got some good ribbing on that from a number of people.
Yeah.
The truth of it is that some guys are manuscript speakers and some aren't. And I'm a little more towards an outline or a little more of a fleshed out outline. And so the danger of that is it allows you to have moments that you make mistakes. So for example, on a normal Sunday, if I would have done that, I would have told Guy after the sermon, hey, don't take that take. I want you to take first service because I didn't make that goof up. I didn't screw it up. I didn't mix. So what happened there is I had the metaphor in my head messed up. And I kind of elaborated on the point more than I had planned to elaborate. I kind of just got in the moment there. And every once in a while when I do that, there's kind of that, like the old cartoon with like the angel on one side and the devil on the other. And they're like, go for it. And the other one's like, no, you don't know what you're going to say.
I have too much of that go for it on my shoulder. It's louder.
Yeah.
So talk about that. So, when you're preaching in our auditorium, you're getting feedback from the crowd, that can help that go for it or don't or move on, those eyes and laughter and whatever. But here, we've transformed our student center into kind of a broadcast or a recording room, if you will. And you're preaching to a camera now instead of people. What's that been like? Has that been a steep learning curve, or is that just the same natural, or has it been different?
Well, there's a couple things about it. On the one hand, it reminds me of some stuff that I did years ago when I was a small groups pastor in Illinois. We used to film small group material, and that was my job, my full-time job. And I made 40 weeks of curriculum a year to get in the hands of our small group leaders, and we would go film it. And each small group session would be 10 to 15 minutes long. And my buddy John Mitchell and I would go around, and we went to Chicago and St. Louis, and we'd travel around different places just to get a good backdrop and do all of our stuff. So it reminded me a little bit of that. And that's a really unnerving situation. I can remember doing some stuff in downtown Chicago, and it's like people are just everywhere, and they're passing you, and nobody's talking to you, but you're talking to a camera. And it feels really, really strange, but you just got to know, just look at the camera, and everybody on the other side of the camera will not feel as weird as you feel. But yeah, in that room, there's just a couple people in there.
Right. And we're not looking at
and
you.
They're running the cameras or the sound or something like that.
Right.
No, they're not at all. And in fact, I took a picture of what I see when I'm up there, and I've not posted it anywhere. Maybe I should. It's just a whole tree of bright lights. Everything else is blacked out, and I can't see anything. I can't see you guys. And of course, everybody is being totally quiet. So even the best joke, even
for sure,
the most engaging story is not going to be followed along. And normally in a sermon, I have people, and there are people in our church that I actually anchor my eye line, my sight line to, because they're great listeners. And this is just a little inside the mind here of your preacher. There are some of you that I don't look at because you don't look me when I'm up there.
You know who you are.
Maybe they don't.
Are. And if you're doing this and you're not very, I'm not.
One of my favorite guys in the audience is your father-in-law. He'll laugh at a joke, and it's loud and booming, and it really is encouraging. I love that guy.
One of the guys
for me,
I don't. Go ahead.
for me, I'm deaf, so I can't hear anything anytime. And so if I got a good joke, I don't know what's going on. And so I walk away.
Well, I try not to look at Clark when he's in the crowd because he's always having a chuckle. He's always having a side chuckle conversation with his wife. And I don't know if I just made a bad seesaw illustration or if it's something about.
I'm going to blame my wife on that one. I'm usually trying to zone in and hear from the Holy Spirit.
And everybody knows you're telling the truth. Pinocchio is your nose is like. Hey,
I don't think this is true at all.
Nathan, on Sunday, just kind of bringing it back to the message a little bit, you said this has been a challenging time for so many, but there's good coming out of this bad situation. What have you seen that has been good, and how can we be more, I guess, diligent in looking for those good things?
Yeah. So the first thing I would want to make sure that was heard was, I do not think coronavirus is a good thing. It's a very bad thing, and it's a very scary thing. And I know there's a lot of anxiety that is legitimately connected to it. I wouldn't ever wish for this moment if I was if I was to ask God for a great 2020. However, I see a handful of things. You guys could probably speak into this as well. I mean, for one, I see, and I mentioned this in the sermon, I see people asking like big time life questions, and they're examining, what do I believe? And why do I believe what I believe? Or is what I believe gonna sustain me during this time? Are the foundations of it strong enough to stand up to scrutiny or examination? So that's good. I see people just loving on other people, right? And like just being more neighborly than they've been before. Or think about what this has done for communication for so many of us. We're having little, even just small conversations with people that we haven't talked to in a long time, and this is prompting that. So I mean, there's some good. I don't know, you guys, what are you guys seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of people reaching outside of themselves and knowing that, you know, we've got a neighbor, like we have a neighbor across the street whose husband died less than 6 months ago, and she's in her 90s, and, you know, we're doing the best we can socially, distance wise, to care for her and just interact with her and talk with her. But, you know, it's been 4 months since we've talked to her just because of winter. And so this has really helped kind of push us out of that, you know, out of our home and to talk to people and engage with people. And so you're right. It's bad, but good can come from it. You think about Romans chapter 8.
Yeah. I'm excited about all the people that are able to take in, like you were talking about, filming it online and showing it online. And I think it's interesting seeing some of the reach that it's had for people that might not be comfortable walking into the church building. You know, I mean, it takes some effort and intentionality to do that. You're getting up in the morning, you're getting ready, you're walking into a crowd of people that you know that you're going to have to interact with, that you may not know, or you might feel judged, or you know, and this is so easy that people are logging on and they're hearing this message in a safe environment that maybe otherwise they wouldn't have entered into. And we've seen the numbers of people that are hearing that message and worshiping with Guy really large and big, way more than what they were in this brick and mortar. And so it's been really encouraging. I think God is doing something there.
So Nathan, you were talking about perspective, and I love the pictures that we threw up. You know, when we were practicing it, I had not seen the arrow in the FedEx, and it took me a full day of looking at Continental Tire just to see that. You know, we're all kind of missing sports right now, the three of us, and I know other people are definitely doing
now,
that.
Would you really be watching biking? Really? I mean, are you that desperate now?
I feel pretty desperate right now. I mean, I feel like, you know, I've watched every sports documentary there is to watch. I mean, they're airing all these old games. It cracks me up that these TV stations are airing games that, are 10, 20 years old, 30 years old, and we're watching them. We're watching them, and with joy.
With joy, yeah.
No, it is getting pretty desperate. It is getting pretty desperate. I haven't turned on ESPN in 2 weeks because what are they talking about? There's nothing to talk about. And
right.
That's been a major departure from my normal routine. It hasn't been what I'm used to. But Brian, you were talking about one of the wins from this has been people connecting to the technology or to the live stream or to the that has been one of the best things that's come of this. Is we've been talking for a while about getting this going. In fact, had plans later in the summer to get this set up, and didn't know we were going to have kind of a baptism by fire to get it going. But it's been a big win for us. And I think just the ease, like I'd be curious to know how you guys are watching it. Are you watching it on an iPad or a computer? Or are you watching it on TV, on your smart TV through YouTube, or how are you guys taking it in?
We're doing YouTube on our TV, our smart TV. So YouTube's an app, and we just plug in the Northview Christian Church channel and are able to go catch that, which has been super cool. So my sound bar, it sounds awesome in my living room at 10:45 on Sunday morning.
Yeah. We're doing the same thing. We're watching it on YouTube, and just like what you were saying, Sean, when it comes to worship time, we're cranking it, and because nobody even my own family doesn't want to hear me sing, so we have to crank that sucker really, really loud. But I will say, I jumped on the computer for the Northview.online.church, and I really did love the comments and getting connected and everybody saying hi, and that was great. That was awesome.
Yeah. In week number 1, somebody said, "Oh, I feel really weird talking during church," because we were talking about the message, and I've loved it. I've been able to host both of the weeks, and it's just been really cool. Getting to interact with people. We had people from Arizona and Illinois watching us this weekend. So it's just cool to see that we're not just a church in Danville anymore. We're a digital church that is able to reach out. So that's been a lot of fun. Yeah,
some of our missionaries were able to hook in with us in
Dominican Republic. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. It's really cool. It's really cool. I know the online Northview.online.church has so much more interactivity. So it's been great to see that and to see people using that. The ease of the YouTube is undeniable. Mm-hmm. That's something that is just really, really helpful. I think more and more people, some people might not even know, they might be listening to this and not even know that, oh man, yeah, I could use my smart TV or my Roku or my Fire Stick or something. And you would lose some connectivity as far as the typing of messages in the chat, or you could just have it open and still be watching it on your screen.
That's what we did.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah, no, that's been a win from all this, because this is not going to go away once we get back to physically gathering. I think it's going to change the way people have been able to stay in contact and connection with, like a sermon series, for example. Over the years, people, they're gone on vacation for a couple weeks in a row. It's easy to lose 2 weeks of that series. You never go back and watch it. You never stay connected to it. This content is a lot more shareable, and it's a lot more, and that's something we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of people experience the service and then going, I know who needs to see this, and then I'm going to send a link, to it. And people have been hungry for it, so it's been great to see it used.
So back to your sermon on Sunday, you've shared this concept with us a lot. You were talking about top down and bottom up, right? Is that how you say it? Like, where did that originate from for you?
I honestly can't remember where it came from. I'm sure I stole it from somebody, but I've been using it for so long that I can't even remember. I'm a synthesizer. Like when I'm writing sermons, or when I'm always trying to synthesize information, and I see a whole bunch of stuff and I want to go, give me the 2 or 3 categories that it all fits in, or what are the things that, and I do that constantly, probably to a fault, but it was a simple way to communicate, and it's fit in so many different sermons and in so many different applications. Basically, am I going to live through my feelings and my emotions? Or maybe said another way, am I convinced that the only person I have to convince of my viewpoint is myself? And if so, why? And that's kind of that bottom up approach where all I care about is what I think or feel or have experienced. And I've just seen in my time in ministry, so many people living life through that viewpoint. And it's a tough way to live and get absolute life answers,
Right.
because then you're limited to only what you've seen or what you know or what you've experienced. And as real as those may be, it's so limited. So when you're trying to say, this is what life is all about, I just have a hard time. When I find myself thinking that way, I have to take a step back and go, okay, so you've been here 39 years in the whole lifespan of the created world. And, you've lived in a few cities, but do you think you have the sum total of wisdom that exists in the universe on every subject, on every, and you start doing that. And what happens to me is I start feeling a lot smaller, and the world and God starts getting a lot bigger. And then I go, okay, maybe he has something here that he could reveal to me, so that I could sort through what I'm thinking and feeling and experiencing. But if I have to choose between what he says and what I feel, well, he's got a lot more clout than I do. So
it's like Job and the end of this whole book of Job, where God, basically unleashes on him and says, all right, stand up, and you're about to take this like a man.
Take it like a man.
And God's like, where were you?
Where were you?
Right. So you talked about Joseph and Elijah, Mary and Joseph.
Yeah.
Were there any other people or stories that you could connect with that really illustrate, I guess, walking through this type of theology?
I bet there's a bunch. You guys could throw in some too. Gideon was the first person that came to mind when you just said who else. He's a guy that was struggling with perspective. He was a guy who was trying to use his own wisdom and his own viewpoint, and it kind of ran him into some trouble. Jesus's disciples, especially in the final week, and in this final week, they were not getting it. And I mean, I don't know if we would either, but they were really, think about the emotions of seeing Jesus arrested and then crucified, and just the defeat and just the utter despair that would create. And if you wanted to make a declaration about life truth in that moment through those experiences, well, we just know in a few days later, you would have been monumentally wrong about what universal realities were. So, I think it's both about a historical perspective. It's about God's just his role, I guess, as creator, and his size, what he is compared to us. So the top down, bottom up has just been a way. I've probably used it too much, but this felt like an opportunity to speak it, and potentially to speak it to an audience that I wouldn't normally have an opportunity to have listen to it, and kind of share that thought.
Yeah, whenever I look in, we've been walking through parts of Mark with the students, and the disciples were, like you said, were having a hard time measuring up Jesus and understanding from their perspective who he was. It started off with the what is this teaching that he has, right? What is this? They were amazed at his teaching, but then it quickly moved into, who is this? This guy is calming storms with a word, driving out demons with a word, who is this? And it occurs to me that in scripture, you don't find too many people that overestimate God. You find plenty of us that underestimate him. But there's not too many times. In fact, some of the times whenever Jesus was amazed, right? It was whenever they began to understand who he was, right? That had the faith in him. So absolutely, I understand what you're saying there.
Yeah. No, that's a great connection. I think Mary is such a great picture from minute one of living top down. Here's this girl that has been saddled with unbelievable responsibility, and never shrinks back from the moment and chooses to do why me? Why are you asking me to do this? And you just think about how hard it was. I mean, she was dogged with claims of illegitimacy for Jesus's entire life. I mean, it was followed Jesus into his adult years, and she knew the story, and she just had to live with a different perspective and with a different set of views on what was real and what wasn't real. So, no, I think there's probably parts of everybody's story that could be lived that way. Again, I mentioned Joseph. I think he's a great example of. We have a series planned for later in the year where we're going to look at Joseph's life, and we called the series Plot Twist. And it's like what do you do? What do you do when life throws that hardship your way that you didn't really deserve or see coming?
Right.
Yeah.
So you series,
go ahead. Well, I was going to say in this series, you've titled it "Do Not Lose Heart," and that comes from that text one of the texts that you preached this week, actually. Why is that so key to not only then when he wrote that, but then continues to be key for us here and now, right?
Yeah, I think the verse that I really I appreciate 2 Corinthians 4 and 5. Well, 2 Corinthians in particular. The first 5 chapters are so real as a pastor. And I think part of the reason they've been special to me, those verses or those chapters have been special to me. Part of the reason I called it a North Star passage is because I resonate so much with some of you guys probably do too, some of the struggles and some of the human weight that can be tied to ministry and your validation and your source of identity and misunderstandings and then just overall hardships and difficulties. He's just so transparent. He's very, very real and very, very raw in that section. And I think what I like about how he's talking about don't lose heart there is he doesn't mean don't ever have a bad day or don't ever expect to be hardship free or difficulty free. I think he just helps us see that there's a difference between having a bad day and being completely demoralized, like there's no winning. There's no, you know what I mean? Like the game is over and it isn't gonna get better from here. And I think he got a little bit. I feel like what you can see is there's a little bit of self-disclosure tied to his own personal experience that we see in that particular verse, and it's almost like he's had his own resurrection experience, and it's changed him moving forward. And so he knows it could be hard, might be challenging, difficult, but in the end, this is going to be A, worth it, and B, it's going to work out.
So you also you ended your sermon with a story from Mark chapter 9. And what do you think? I think as preachers, we like to get into the shoes of what we're reading. And so what do you think the emotional state of this father would have been as he walked up to Jesus?
Right.
Man, I can only imagine how desperate he is. It's kind of like the woman in the gospel is called the woman with the issue of blood. And she's tried and tried and tried and tried to get this fixed, and she spent her life savings, and it's not getting fixed. And as a dad, I just know I'd do anything for my kids. And he's probably tried many, many times to get help, and he just can't seem to find help. And so I see him coming to the disciples very, very hopeful that they can help him, and then they can't even help him. And so it's like Jesus is his last resort. He's got nothing else after this.
Yeah. Yeah. You said, in that passage where it says, but if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us. And then Jesus's response was, if you can, right? If you can.
Yeah.
And he said, everything's possible. And then it says, immediately the boy's father exclaimed, I do believe, help me overcome my unbelief. And then you said, maybe there wasn't a more truer statement ever said. Why do you resonate with that? Because I think we all do at some level.
Yeah. I feel like you could write that verse inside my Bible, because that's like inside the front cover.
The front cover, yeah. Nathan Rector, and then help me overcome my unbelief.
Yeah, like, because I think there is this sense of conviction and certainty that's also met in our journey with such it's somehow there's the certainty and the uncertainty collide in our life all the time.
Absolutely.
And I don't know how to say it other than that. And so I just appreciate a guy who said in such a short, I mean, that's a very quotable, that is a very, powerful way to say, like, I'm not saying I don't believe in you, God, but I'm saying I have moments where I struggle believing you, God,
That's
and
right.
so, like, I trust you in the big picture, but in the moment right now, I don't get it. I don't see it. I don't understand it. So help me. I'm not giving up on you, but I don't get you. I don't understand you. I don't understand, what you're doing, and or how this is ever going to work out for the good. Man, I've had so many moments like that where it's like, I do believe in you, God. Sometimes reluctantly, I believe in you. You've shown me too much. I know you're real. I know you're here, but I do not know what you're doing, and I don't understand it. And you're going to have to help me here. You're going to have to walk me through this, because I don't get it.
Absolutely. What's encouraging is, people have said many dumb things to Jesus, and he would call them out on it. And this guy utters this really broken kind of prayer that almost feels like a doubt. And yet Jesus goes on and heals. And so it gives me great encouragement to know that in this time that we're in right now, where a lot of us, I think, are crying out, God, I believe in you, but there's just something like, I just don't know how to reconcile everything, that he's not looking at us like, you morons, how can you not trust me more?
Right. Absolutely. And I think it's a prayer that he loves to answer. I think it's a place of submission that he loves to find us in, and I think that's part of what the good of this has been. Like, we're finding ourselves in that place, and we're really genuinely realizing we're kind of powerless here. We need help.
Yeah.
Well, hey, this has been awesome. I want to wrap up with one more question, but Brian, Nathan, thank you for spending time with me and walking through and talking about this. I'm a very tangible thing, something I can grab a hold of. So Nathan, if you could just encourage us with one last thing as we go forward with the rest of this week, what's one way that we can really fix our eyes on Jesus?
Yeah. I would just encourage you to take two looks, one backwards and one forwards. Okay. Just to think practically, I need you to look backwards 2,000 years to a moment in history where God didn't insulate himself from pain, but he actually absorbed it all, took it on himself backwards. And then also, you'll find Jesus in both viewpoints. You're going to find him looking backwards before your life, and you're going to find him looking forward after your life. And you're going to find him sitting on a throne with everything made right, with no more tears, no more crying. And so I hope by looking backwards and by looking forwards, you can appreciate that this tension that you're in right now has been dealt with in the past, and it's kind of a future ramification that is 100% to your benefit. that this is not going to be your forever home. And that's a good thing. Right? And because God's got something even better for us there. It doesn't mean he's not going to just leave us hanging until the end, until we get to heaven. But I hope that a look backwards and a look forwards will help you look at your current moment with a different perspective.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. I love it. Really, if you're listening to this podcast, you're going to know that whether you're listening to it on March 30th when we recorded this, or if you're listening to it March 30th, 2021, that message is true, and that we can continue to look at what Jesus has done and where he's going and what he's doing to take us there. So awesome, Nathan. Thank you. Thank you guys for listening. Please check us out. NorthviewChristian.org is our website. And if you want to join us for an online service, you can go to northview.online.church. And we look forward to seeing you guys there. Have a great time. See you.
Thanks, guys.
Yep.